Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you did not live in St. Lucia and you listen to the Prime Minister, you might almost believe what he is saying is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But sadly, we live in St. Lucia. We experience buildings, markets being opened during a state of emergency without physical distancing. We experience the police where everyone is allowed to demonstrate in the international countries that he speaks of. We see the police, against their will, being forced to barricade around the Parliament buildings to stop people from protesting, whereas he speaks about the international events, and all over on the same CNN he speaks of, you see people demonstrating for their rights. But in St. Lucia, the police, against their will, are asked to barricade buildings. We see during the state of emergency buildings being demolished and all sorts of actions that are against the protocols. But the Prime Minister stands up and in his most pious voice tries to convince the people of St. Lucia that the state of emergency is only for COVID. Mr. Speaker, I will outline what has been the opposition's position regarding the state of emergency and regarding the COVID-19 crisis that all of us are concerned about. And I want to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition has always supported the medical fraternity in their protocols and in their postures as it relates to COVID-19. So the opposition is clear. The opposition understands the seriousness of the COVID pandemic, and the opposition will continue to lend its support to the scientific protocols and the scientific reasons why COVID-19 should be controlled. But the opposition will not be carried away by political maneuverings that are masked to keep us quiet while the government continues on its own agenda. We will not be masked, we will not be bullied, we will not be threatened. Once the government continues to use the state of emergency for its political agenda, the opposition will stand against it, and will stand against it in a manner that is constitutional and that is right. So we will not be his words, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the state of emergency was declared firstly on the 23rd of May for 7 days, of March, sorry, for 7 days, Mr. Speaker. And we came and we supported it. Then they came again and they extended it from the 31st of March to the 26th of April. We supported it, albeit we had some reservations. They came again, and from the 27th of April to the 31st of May, and we supported it. Another 26 days. We came and we supported it, Mr. Speaker. We said, we have some reservations, but because of the situation, we are going to support it. And you return today, not for 26 days, but for 4 months. From the 1st of June to the 30th of September, for 4 months, and you give the same reasons that you gave for extending it for 26 days, now you want for 4 months. The question is, why 4 months on this occasion and not 26 days, Mr. Speaker? But the opposition will continue to be responsible. Will continue to be responsible, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, I want to outline what the position that the opposition has taken as it relates to this COVID-19 situation. I want to outline it, Mr. Speaker, because you know, on the outside, when they come in, they speak glibly. On the outside, Mr. Speaker, they give the impression that the opposition, and some member in this parliament said it, the opposition would like COVID-19 to get worse. The opposition, they come and they give these nice speeches, Mr. Speaker, but on the outside, what they do on the outside and what they say is very much different, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to outline what the opposition has done in relation to COVID-19. On February the 5th, 2020, our spokesman for help, the Honorable Moses Shabatis, held a press conference, Mr. Speaker. And at this press conference, he expressed the concern that Chinese nationals were being allowed to come to St. Lucia at the time when COVID-19 was in China, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Moses Jabatis, the member for Vieux-Fort North, had held a press conference, and he said that we should close our borders to China as the other Caribbean countries, Jamaica and Trinidad, has done. The Honorable Moses Jabatis asked the following questions. Is there truth in the speculation that Chinese nationals, some of whom are connected to the DSH, were allowed to land in St. Lucia deliberately before the announcements of restrictions by the government? The Honorable Jabatis also said, will the government take immediate measures to assess these nationals who may have returned from infected countries even if they came before the date of the restrictions? He was called an agent of doom and gloom. It was said that we were spreading panic, Mr. Speaker, when the Honorable Moses Jabatis asked these questions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we held a press conference on the 5th of March. And at this press conference, I questioned whether the Prime Minister had attended the CARICOM Heads of Government Conference. I questioned it. I also asked the following questions, Mr. Speaker. I asked, does St. Lucia possess any onshore testing facilities for the virus to make informed and science-driven decisions? I also asked, can the Prime Minister release a national plan of action that provides as comprehensive as possible how we will respond to any severity in cases in particular? I asked, what are the plans for the elderly? Is there any special training for home caregivers and additional support to make sure our elderly receives that highest level of priority? I also asked, what are the plans for the homeless and people who are on the streets? Are the schools being provided with soap and other disinfectants and ensure there is a constant supply of water at all schools in the event of an outbreak? If there is an outbreak, at what point will school be closed? If there is an outbreak and schools are closed, what happened to students who will be sitting CSC and CAPE exams? If there's an outbreak at a ministry, what would happen? Do we have a public service response plan? I asked that from March the 5th, 2020. I also asked, are our medical personnel adequately equipped with protective gear and other equipment? Have we organized adequate isolation and quarantine facilities? Is there adequate monitoring at all points of entry? Has the government prepared a substantial information dissemination plan for the public? I asked these questions, Mr. Speaker, on the 5th of March, 2020. I also asked, on the 5th of March, Mr. Speaker, I asked these questions. Then we held a town hall meeting in Dennery North, Mr. Speaker, and these questions had not been answered. And I said that in my opinion, St. Lucia was the worst prepared for the COVID-19 virus. Instead of, Mr. Speaker, understanding what I said and respond to these questions, they played politics. They played politics between me and the member for Dennery North. That was the entire situation, playing politics. Instead of answering the questions, Mr. Speaker, that is what they played. They played politics as usual. Everything for this government is politics, and they mask under the hypocrisy of no politics, no politics. Everything for this government is politics, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I addressed the nation on March the 15th, 2020, and when we had the first and second confirmed cases of COVID, and that was a cause for concern, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister telephoned me and we discussed attendance at a NIMAC meeting. And I said to him that I would attend the NIMAC meeting, Mr. Speaker. At that address to the nation, Mr. Speaker, I urged the government to put together a COVID-19 special task force involving government agencies, the opposition, civil society, churches, health professionals, and to guide the way forward. Mr. Speaker, I also urged the Chief Medical Officer that she is the authority on such matters, and at no time she should be swayed by politics or political considerations. On the 16th of March, Mr. Speaker, I attended the NIMAC meeting. And at the NIMAC meeting, I made the following recommendations. I said, first and foremost, we must ensure that travel restrictions are placed on countries worst affected with the virus. I said the St. Labour Party strongly recommends that the government put additional travel advisories, and these be applied to persons with a travel history from the United Kingdom, the United States, and all affected European countries. I also said that returning nationals from countries where travel advisories have been placed should be properly monitored. I advise that we close our borders to all cruise ships for the next 2 months and limit the number of ports of entry into St. Lucia. I said that essential to the control of our ports of entry and the containment of the disease is the ability and capacity to screen arrivals and quickly test potentially infected persons. I also said appropriate technologies such as infrared scanning thermometers are required to improve screening. I said testing is like turning on the light to the disease, and the ability to do testing on island is crucial in the battle to contain the spread of COVID-19. Widespread testing is vital but costly. However, when the lives of our citizens are concerned, costs must not be a determining factor. And I said the Republic of China in Taiwan has been very successful in containing the virus, and the government should approach Taiwan with a view to procuring the necessary testing equipment. And I also said, Mr. Speaker, that St. Lucia has also engaged the government of Cuba for assistance in medical supplies. And I urge the people of St. Lucia to practice good hygiene and social distancing. I also said, we therefore recommend the opposition an immediate suspension of all mass crowd events and large gatherings in the country for the time being. With regards to Carnival, I said the responsible action for the future of the activity in July is to be postponed to later in the year, but we should discuss with the bands, health officials, and other players another date for timing of the event. Businesses and cinemas would also have to practice social distancing in their operations. I said that at that NIMAC meeting, we welcome the early closure of the educational institutions. But I also said it would have been better that our Form 5 and 4 students would have been going home with their laptop computers to complete their assignments and SBAs. I said the St. Lucia Labour Party will suspend all its public meetings and town halls and observe social distancing if we have smaller internal meetings. Government should create a corps of sanitation crews with the right equipment to help disinfect busy public places such as public transport, markets, public buildings, and the like. I said the government should also pursue the installation of hand-washing areas to aid in better hygiene. We advise businesses to ramp up their sanitation and personal protection efforts and ensure that all staff are trained in keeping the surfaces clean. I also said we must also prepare for the eventuality that we'll have to close down the country for at least a short period in order to contain the virus. I said it's essential that there is messaging in Creole on the disease. And I also said at that time, that the government may be forced to commission the Owen King EU Hospital, and the government should also reconsider its position regarding the St. Jude Hospital. The government must ensure that there is sufficient food on island to provide a reasonable amount of cover. The government should also guard against price gouging of certain items. It would be a good idea for the government to purchase supplies such as soaps and sanitizers for broad distribution. I said the St. Lucia Labour Party will support the government if it goes to Parliament to break the lockbox, which has been collecting airport tax revenue for nearly 3 years now. Mr. Speaker, I also said that the National Insurance Corporation should play a vital role in providing at the time what I call sick leave benefits to persons who are quarantined, isolated, or temporarily lose their jobs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, understanding the seriousness of COVID-19, on March the 18th, 2020, I again addressed the nation, Mr. Speaker. And I said, Mr. Speaker, that the St. Lucia Labour Party is fully committed to a one nation, harmonious approach to fighting the threat of COVID-19. I also urge the Prime Minister not to politicize the national effort, and we pledge once again to uphold the spirit of bipartisanship. We also said that we will be pleased that we have been invited and to participate in joint meetings, and we will attend. Our country cannot pay the price of being late in our decision making, and we must act with haste to protect our people. Exactly. I made some specific suggestions, Mr. Speaker. I said we must not continue to host NIMAC meetings with almost 100 persons in a room, and all these people happen to be the key decision makers in St. Lucia. And we also said we should try to have smaller meetings, Mr. Speaker, but we should put in place a lean and mean rapid response task force, which could meet regularly and at short notice to lead the national fight against the virus. The composition of such a task force should be limited to heads of key agencies, along with representatives of government and the opposition. I also said we should not wait for the first evidence of country-to-country transmission of the virus to initiate aggressive social distancing measures. I also said we should consider instituting a ban on places where the public assemblies as a first step to limit the maximum number of people who should congregate at one point for at least 14 days. And let us undertake an extensive public education campaign in both English and Creole to ensure that all citizens are fully briefed on how to respond to the threat of the virus and what to expect over the next few months. While we discourage, Mr. Speaker, the spreading of rumors, the first responsibility is to give out honest, transparent information, Mr. Speaker. I also said we need a special education campaign for the youth, because they are the ones who feel bold, and these are the ones who will congregate in bars and blocks and on the fields, etc. And I also said that we must announce a preliminary minimum package of benefits to workers who will be displaced by the economic fallout. Already hotels and small businesses are closing down, and we are beginning to feel the pressure, Mr. Speaker. And as a matter of urgency, the Prime Minister must make some policy statements on mortgage deferrals, higher statutory sick pay for workers who are laid off, and help for the self-employed, example, taxi drivers and vendors. Mr. Speaker, we have cooperated, Mr. Speaker, with the government fully. We have not made any statements that would minimize our concern for the health and welfare of the people of St. Lucia and for the containment of the COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Speaker. So our conscience is clear. We have no issues. Our conscience is clear, Mr. Speaker. Our conscience is clear, Mr. Speaker. But this morning, this government will come to Parliament to extend the state of emergency for 4 months, Mr. Speaker. But whilst they glibly speak about COVID-19, the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under this state of emergency, there is something called a competent authority. And that competent authority, and let me make it clear, and soon in this debate, members of the opposition will outline other pieces of legislation where you can achieve exactly the same things that you can achieve under COVID-19 to protect the people under COVID-19 with other pieces of legislation. We're going to make it clear this morning, Mr. Speaker, for all to hear. Because there are other pieces of legislation in the laws of St. Lucia that will help us, that will assist us in containing COVID-19. I'm taking my time, Mr. Speaker, to outline that because I know the surrogates, what they will say, that this government, this opposition came into the House of Assembly and opposed the state of emergency because we do not want to contain COVID. I know what they will say and I know how they will say it, Mr. Speaker. That is why I am taking the time to outline what the opposition has done and how we have advised on this COVID situation, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to take you back to the powers under the state of emergency, Mr. Speaker. It says, the interest in the interest of protecting the public safety and health, the competent authority, in consultation with the Minister responsible for finance, may by order waive the application of any rules of law governing the procurement of goods and services. May waive the application of any rules of law governing the procurement of goods and services. The competent authority is defined under Section 2 as the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. So the Prime Minister, under the state of emergency, can waive all the procurement rules. He can waive, although under present legislation, on the advice of the Permanent Secretary, the Prime Minister can still provide direct awards, Mr. Speaker. But the state of emergency gives him the power not to consult the Permanent Secretary. Can do it on his own. And you tell me that is because you want to contain COVID-19. And you want to extend it for 4 months, Mr. Speaker. But you want to contain COVID-19. So why do you want power just to buy what you want, purchase what you want, Mr. Speaker? And whereas you can still do it, as you have been doing it, Mr. Speaker. You've been given many direct awards. But now you want to waive it completely so you can do more for yourself. More of these buying for yourself, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under this state of emergency, it says, the competent authority may, by order, prohibit the assembly of 2 or more persons in a public place in any area specified in the order in the interest of public health. The competent authority, the Prime Minister, may, by order, prohibit the assembly of 2 or more persons in a public place in an area specified in the interest of public health. So in his own discretion, even though he's not a doctor, he can say 2 people can't stay anywhere. But the chief medical officer already has that power. The chief medical officer already has the power to put people in isolation, to quarantine them. But the competent authority wants it also, Mr. Speaker. But in the same vein, they will open a market, Mr. Speaker. In the same vein, they'll open a market. But you've given them the power to say 2 or 3 people cannot congregate in one particular place. That is what the state of emergency does, Mr. Speaker. Although the CMO already has that power, Mr. Speaker. The state of emergency, Mr. Speaker, further allows the competent authority may by order impose isolation on all individuals within a particular area on the entire country in the interest of public health. The competent authority may by order impose isolation on all individuals within a particular area or on the entire country in the interest of public health. But there are sections 5, 6, and 7 where the CMO already has the power of detention, imposition of restrictions, and isolation of persons who are suspected to have COVID-19. But you give the authority to the competent authority. You give it you also give it to the competent authority. But the CMO already has the power, but you also give it to the competent authority. No wonder the police are stopping people from becoming in the front of Parliament this morning. Because you're giving the power to the competent authority. So even the CMO says that's not necessary, the competent authority can do whatever they want and stop people from assembling, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this state of emergency allows the competent authority may by order require a person within an area specified in the order to remain indoors between the hours specified in this order, and a person who within an area specified is or remains outdoors between the hours without a permit in writing from the competent authority, or a person authorized by the competent authority commits an offense. So this ceremony is giving the competent authority the power to say, I can't leave my home. That's what we're doing for 4 months, Mr. Speaker. And we hide it under COVID. And the chief medical officer can do the same. She already has the powers of isolation and the powers of quarantine. But it gives the competent authority that. And you say me, oh, you're dreaming. You think that will ever happen, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, these government's actions show that it can happen. It can happen, Mr. Speaker. There are people in this, there are people, based on experience, this government can do it, Mr. Speaker. This government already gets already involved in tapping telephones, etc. It can happen. Mr. Speaker, this, you're giving the competent authority that power. And that is why you want to extend it for 4 months. And for 4 months, you take it from June to September, Mr. Speaker. So you enter into October, and then you go into Christmas, and you reach the year 2021, the year of decision. That's where you reach. So you get there in September, so you keep them under control. You can use the state's money to buy whatever you want, to demolish buildings and put the backfill on people's property. You can do whatever you want, Mr. Speaker. You can do whatever you want in that 4-month period, but you have the power to do it because you are the competent authority, and you hide over COVID, under COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. And you hide under COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, further, Mr. Speaker, this state of emergency allows the competent authority power not to publish or cause to be published, posted or reposted over a media platform, inclusive of social media, any purported news or report or purported statements of facts, knowing or having reasonable cause to suspect that the news report is true, is untrue or false, or may incite public fear, panic, or ethnic hatred. The state of emergency allows the competent authority to do that, Mr. Speaker. Yes. What does it have to do with COVID? There are already laws in the country that control that. There's the Misuse of Computer Act. There are already laws in the country. There are laws of defamation, there are laws of slander, there are laws of libel, but you want to give the competent authority to the Speaker, and you tell me that because he is the competent authority and he says he won't do it, I must trust him? Or the people of St. Lucia must trust him? Just because he is the competent authority, Mr. Speaker, and you want to extend that state of emergency for 4 months, take you in to September, Mr. Speaker. So when you get into September, you get into Christmas time, and people are interested in Christmas in these hard times. So you've done what you want to do, as you started to do in the 4 months. These are the crucial 4 months that you need for political expediency. The crucial 4 months, and COVID is a nice excuse to organize it, Mr. Speaker. To organize it. COVID is a great excuse. But all the things you have to do for COVID, you can't do it with the CMO. There's no need for any competent authority. The CMO has the power under the law and the power under the Act to have all the measures that you need to do to control COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says that he needs 4 months because he needs to take some emergency actions. He wants to have 4 months to do it. If this House is ever called, Mr. Speaker, and you can vouch for that, and it is because there's an emergency, all members of the opposition will make themselves present regardless of the time of day or night. We'll make ourselves present once it's discussed the people's business, Mr. Speaker. So there's no excuse that you need 4 months to take emergency action. There's no excuse, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, even without a state of emergency, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you briefly what has happened even without a state of emergency, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you may find it strange why I'm saying that I don't trust the competent authority. You may find it strange why I'm saying I don't trust the government. You may find it strange why I'm saying I don't trust the government's word. You may find it strange, Mr. Speaker. You might say to me that we are men of honor. We are honorable men, and we should trust each other. We should trust each other's word, Mr. Speaker. And they always attack us on credibility, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to your attention, Mr. Speaker, reasons why I do not trust the government as far as the state of emergency is concerned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know the role of the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the highest legal officer in the country. That is why, under some circumstances, the Attorney General is not a politician. He's not a politician because he needs to give the government legal advice of a sound and impartial nature. The Attorney General, and you may recall Attorney Generals like the late Lorenzo Williams, Attorney Generals who did the work of the country, Mr. Speaker. Attorney Generals like Kim St. Rose. We are proud of her. Mr. Speaker, you must understand Attorney Generals have a serious role to play, Mr. Speaker. So when the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, makes a declaration, Mr. Speaker, you expect the government to follow. When the Attorney General puts on paper an agreement by the Attorney General, an agreement signed by parties, Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General, you expect the government to follow the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, this morning we are not discussing the demolition of any building. You know, that's not for us to discuss. We are discussing trust. We are discussing, Mr. Speaker, the fundamental trust that must exist between a government and its agents. The fundamental trust that must exist between the word of the government and the actions of the government. This is what we are discussing this morning, Mr. Speaker. It's the government's habit to commit what is called political umbrage. They come from one issue and they move to the other one, Mr. Speaker. This morning, I'm speaking about a specific issue of trust between the government and the Attorney General. Between the Attorney General and parties to an agreement. And if it happened before, it was wrong. If it was wrong. And if it happened before, you were wrong, and I was there, the people of St. Lucia made me pay for it. That's why I'm here today. So we make no point about, we're not ashamed of saying that we lost the election. We're not ashamed, and we will not do anything like you all will do to win the election. We lost the election free and fair, and we lost, and we are in a position, Mr. Speaker. But the plans that you all have, the points that you all have to ensure that you all win the elections, the people of St. Lucia will abort them. The plans that you all have, by whatever means necessary to win the elections, the people of St. Lucia will abort them. Mr. Speaker, the attorney, of course we want to win. We want to win by discussion, by argument, by fair play, and by a fair electoral process. That's what we want to win by. We don't want to win by...
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, what is before us is not elections. Remain.
Mr. Speaker, of course we want to win. And the people will make us win. Of course we want to win. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so I'm speaking about fundamental trust between the Attorney General and the government representative and the people of St. Lucia. I'm speaking about trust, Mr. Speaker. And not an isolated event, generally trust, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 4th of March, there's a letter from the Attorney General making certain commitments. And if you want, Mr. Speaker, I can make it a document in the house, or you want me to read it? I can read it, Mr. Speaker. You don't give me instructions. Mr. Speaker? No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, but I'll make it. If you want, I'll make it, Mr. Speaker. Can get it. Document in the house. When you finish, I'll make it in the house. 4th of March, 2018. Pursuant to a consent order dated 24th October 2018 and letter of agreement of the same date, the government of St. Lucia facilitated 2 meetings between the St. Lucia National Trust and the architects assigned to the project. These meetings took place on the 7th December 2018 and the 25th of February 2019 respectively, and a joint site visit was conducted immediately after our meeting of the 25th of February. At both meetings, the architects made presentations of the conceptual designs for the police headquarters project. The proposed layout indicates that the former Royal Jail, historic annex, Byron Asylum, and police buildings will be incorporated into the design. This is again consistent with undertakings previously given. In accordance with items 3 and 4 of our letter of undertaking, the St. Lucia National Trust is therefore invited to submit any recommendations concerning the conceptual designs as presented by the architects. I would be grateful if such recommendations could be submitted to my offices by the 5th of March 2019. These recommendations will be considered by the government in developing the final design for the project. Please do not hesitate to contact the undersigned should any further information or clarification be required, and is signed by the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, I have no issue with the competence or the professionalism of the Attorney General. So I don't want you all to let your surrogates say I was attacking the Attorney General. I'm not attacking the Attorney General. If I want to attack the Attorney General, when the Attorney General gets in politics, we'll do what it is. But right now, he's not in politics. So I don't want you to go and let your surrogates say, I'm attacking the Attorney General. I'm not attacking the Attorney General. I'm attacking the trust that the Attorney General can write a letter and the political directorate can just ignore the letter and go and demolish a building to use the demolished material on the land of certain people. That is what I'm talking about. Demolishing the building and using the demolished building to backfill the land of certain influential individuals in this country. That's what I'm talking about. Mr. Speaker, I also have a copy of the agreement. And I can make a document in the House, Mr. Speaker. And the agreement is signed by the Attorney General, the Development Control Authority, the Commissioner of Crown Lands, the St. Lucia National Trust, and the contractor. That agreement was signed by the CEO, Mr. Speaker. So we're not talking about destroying buildings and trying to play as if you like the police. Who likes the police more? Who likes the police more than me? My father was a policeman. I went to school on policeman's salary. That's why I don't want you to cut the salary. Because if they had cut the salary of my mother who was a teacher and my father was a policeman, I'll not lie on today. So I like police. Don't pretend that you don't like policemen. When we started to build police stations, you said we were wasting money. When we began reconstructing police stations, the Marshall Police Station, the station in Marigot, Mr. Speaker, when the Viewford Police Station, you said we were wasting money. You all over the place, wasting money, we should do things for tourism instead. That's what you said. when we decided to build the police headquarters, you said we were getting involved with the Trinidad Mafia because the Prime Minister's wife was Trinidadian. That's what you said on platform. Don't play now that you like the police so much. I love the police. My police.
My police.
You don't own no police. The police have been paid by the taxpayers of this country, not by you. Don't try this nonsense. My police. The police will not be fooled, Mr. Speaker. Will not be fooled by that buff. You love your police dearly. Mr. Speaker, we love the police. We love the police more than you. I like the police more because my father was a police. So, Mr. Speaker, so we're speaking about trust, Mr. Speaker. And today, Mr. Speaker, this government, because the word of I feel sorry for the Attorney General, because I know the Attorney General is a man of honor. The Attorney General will not sign a document if he does not have the good faith and you believe that the government would follow the rules, would follow what the document says, Mr. Speaker. But this government, in its arrogance and its vindictiveness and its desire to use the backfill material to put in somebody's land, in that desire, Mr. Speaker, the government has destroyed the building, Mr. Speaker. So we're not arguing about the building. We're arguing about no building. We're arguing about trust, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, find out. You know everything, find out. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are speaking about trust. We are speaking about trust, Mr. Speaker. That's what we're speaking about. We're speaking about whether the government's word can be taken. And that is what's important in the state of emergency. The government using the cover of COVID to pursue their own private agendas, not health considerations. We agree. I've outlined all what we've done as far as health is concerned, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I worry, Mr. Speaker, I worry about this imposition of the state of emergency. And my other colleagues will go deeper into some of the ramifications of that state of emergency. I worry because I have a fundamental problem of trust. That's why I worry. I worry because I have a fundamental problem of trust. I worry because I have a fundamental problem of trust. That's why I worry. I worry because the government's word can't be taken for granted. The government's word can't be taken for granted. So, Mr. Speaker, that is why I worry about the breach of trust with the people of St. Lucia. I worry, Mr. Speaker, because if the government can go against the word of the Attorney General, all of us in St. Lucia have to be afraid, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the agreement with the National Trust was that the National Trust would withdraw its case and discharge the injunction it had obtained to prevent the unlawful demolition of the Royal Jail. The trust and good faith, the National Trust withdrew the case, withdrew the injunction on the 25th of October, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, whereas we understand, Mr. Speaker, that the government needs the people to save the people, we need to have powers to protect COVID. But these powers already exist, Mr. Speaker. And to extend the state of emergency, there is an ulterior motive. And that motive is clear. Look what happened outside this morning. What happened outside this morning? The motive is clear. The motive is to stifle the people's rights and to stifle the people's freedoms, Mr. Speaker. That is why. And whereas we want to control COVID, we hate COVID because COVID can affect any one of us. We will not allow the people's rights to be trampled. We will not allow people. And whilst they talk about social distancing, they are at people's homes, Mr. Speaker, giving them food. At people's homes, giving them a little plate of food, playing politics during COVID-19. And you talk about social distancing, and you want to protect people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 4th of April, Mr. Speaker, I wrote the Prime Minister, for which I have not got any response. I have not got any response, Mr. Speaker. And I wrote him, Mr. Speaker, urging him, Mr. Speaker, and I want to read the final a paragraph in that letter, Mr. Speaker. We as leaders of this country cannot ignore the plight even as we are engaged in battling COVID-19 on the health fronts. We must act simultaneously. I urge you, therefore, to immediately address the nation on the question of an economic relief package for displaced workers that can be implemented in the shortest possible period. Finally, I wish once more to reiterate that the Solution Labour Party stands ready to cooperate with the government in rescuing our country from COVID-19. However, while it's our duty to do so as the official opposition party, we have just as great a responsibility to be watchful and constructively critical of the government's actions, particularly in conditions of a state of emergency. I look forward, therefore, to collaborating with you to save our St. Lucia and our people from the ravages of COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, our conscience is clear where COVID is concerned. We understand the issues involved in COVID. We understand it, and we want to cooperate to save the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. But we will not allow ourselves to be duped by people with political motives, because they spent 4 years, not one hotel has been built, so now you want the cover of COVID and a state of emergency to get what you think will fool people to make you win a general election, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to end, because my colleagues, they have a lot more to say about the state of emergency. A lot more to say. I want to quote, Mr. Speaker, with a quotation from a Dutch journalist, Rutger Bergman, and it said, I want to quote, Mr. Speaker, "It's not hard to imagine this crisis might send us down an even darker path, that rulers will use it to seize more power, restrict the population's freedom, and stoke the flames of racism and hatred. But things can be different. This pandemic could send us down a path of new values. A space has opened up for a different, more realistic view of human nature that humankind has evolved to cooperate. It's from that conviction that all the rest can follow. A government based on trust, a tax system rooted in solidarity, and the sustainable investments needed to secure our future." Mr. Speaker, it's in this light that this opposition party will not support the imposition of the state of emergency for another 4 months, and we look to the day when this government will be able to be trustworthy, when this government will stop wanting to make people cry, when this government will stop, Mr. Speaker, and the people of St. Lucia shall prevail. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.